Welcome to Women in Power Active, an initiative started by You Are Sportswear to empower women to find their own active adventure. I'm your host, Jacalyn Gross. Today, I'm excited to welcome Amanda Bullat, a certified intuitive eating counselor and dietitian who specializes in guiding women through perimenopause and menopause. With years of experience, Amanda combines her expertise in nutrition with a passion for holistic health to help women embrace intuitive eating as a runner, and I just found out now, cyclist. She understands the power of fueling your body for strength. And in this episode, I'm eager to learn practical strategies for finding balance, peace, and nourishment during the transitions of midlife. Welcome, Amanda. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, it's
Really
my
appreciate
pleasure, Jacqueline. It's great to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah. Okay, so I do want to start out with your active lifestyle. So how did you become an active person? And then we can get into the learning portion of the episode where I get to learn a lot about nutrition, which I can't wait to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like a lot of women of my age, being active at first was kind of forced upon us because of the presidential fitness tests in PE in elementary school and junior high.
Hmm.
And honestly, that created a pretty negative association to me with being active, because most of those statistics were unachievable, unless, you had some natural talent. You're only as flexible as you're flexible. And so I kind of started off with a pretty rocky relationship to exercise. And then as I got into junior high and high school, I didn't want to be the last person finishing the mile for the presidential fitness test anymore. So
Hmm.
I started doing some more running with my dad, and he would ride a bike with me and I would run, or when he was still running, we would run together. Anyway, so he really encouraged me to try to be more active, just so I didn't feel so much shame showing up in these PE classes. And that then transitioned into starting high school, my parents going to, I think, an introductory evening, like an orientation
Hmm.
evening, but I wasn't with them. It was something for parents. And you could sign your kid up for whatever activities. And so they
Hmm.
signed me up for cross country running. And they came home and they told me they signed me up for the cross country team. And I was like, is that a great idea? But they said, it was our idea. So if you get into it and you hate it, you can quit it. Anything
Hmm.
that I decided to do, they're like, nope, you got to stick it through. You wanted to do this, you got to stick it through.
Yeah.
Totally get the difference there.
Hmm.
So I got on the cross country team as a freshman in high school in a pretty small area. So I grew up in Central Oregon,
Hmm.
and I ran for Redmond High, which is one of the Central Oregon towns, you might say, between Bend, Redmond, and Sisters.
Okay.
And I had a good experience. Actually, I had shitty coaching. Let's be honest about that. The coach had one foot out the retirement door, but
Yeah.
the other teammates were amazing, and especially the upperclassmen were really great. So I stuck it out because of the people that I was running with. So
Mhm.
as the year went on, my freshman year was terrible. Sophomore year, we got a different coach, and I started to understand a little bit more about the mechanics of running and fueling for running at that time. Like, that was a train wreck.
Yeah.
Like most young athletes, you're probably either under fueling, especially if you're a girl,
Hmm.
and the guys are eating whatever garbage, huge Costco muffins right before a
Hmm.
cross country race. Don't recommend.
Yep.
It comes up in about a mile and a half.
Hmm.
And so, we weren't really taught anything about like how to fuel for sport. But again, the coaching was better, and being with those people, those teammates, was amazing experience for me too. So it kept me wanting to do the sport. And then as I got better at it, and I was enjoying it, I'm like, oh, this is kind of a win-win. I'm no longer the slowest person. There
Hmm.
was always somebody slower than me. And I was enjoying my time with the people that I was running with. That then translated into doing more running on my own
Hmm.
and doing hikes with my family, and not disliking to move my body so much like I did in elementary and junior high school.
Hmm.
And then when I graduated from high school, I went to a Division 1 college, University of Portland, and I thought about joining the cross country team because, again, I'd had such a great experience
Yep.
in high school. But this was a D1 school. This was NCAA Division 1 school. So I could have walked on. I went to one of their meetings and it scared the shit out of me. I'm like, oh, these girls are serious. Like some of these girls are getting full ride scholarships. This is gonna be fast. So I'm like, nope, can't do it. Still missed my old team. So my freshman year, I just ran with some other gals on campus that it was just an interest of theirs. And so I still kept running, but I wasn't running competitively anymore. And then my sophomore year of college, I went to Salzburg, Austria for a study abroad program through the university.
Cool.
And it was the year 99 into 2000. And as I was there, it was still doing some running, more like casual running, just to keep myself sane, so to speak. And I
Mhm.
had been a runner for long enough at that point that it had just started to become part of who I was.
Yep.
And so as we're transitioning into the new millennium, one of my classmates, so I was there with 39 other students from the University of Portland, and we were all living together in these two big houses and taking classes together and traveling together.
Mhm.
And so one of the students, I think it was an uncle, said, well, hey, you guys ought to run a marathon, like do something big to celebrate the new millennium.
Mhm.
And wouldn't it be cool if you ran that marathon and you qualified for the Boston Marathon? Because then when you come back to the States the next year, you guys can run the Boston. I was
Mhm.
like, well, okay, why not? This is what you do when you're 20, right? You're like,
Yep.
sure, why not? And so I ran, I had been doing some half marathons by that point, and there was a group of us students that had all been doing half marathons together. So I ran my first marathon in, I think it was the spring, like late winter, early spring of
Mhm.
2000. And I was literally seconds, minutes away from qualifying for Boston. So I ran the marathon with two other guys, and they finished before me, but then they came back and came back through the old town that we were finishing in. The marathon was in Graz, Austria, and they found me and they ran in with me. And one of them was just one of the guys that came to run the half marathon. There was three that came to run the half marathon, students as well. And they came, they're like, you've got 3 minutes to make it to Boston. Like, let's go. So I qualified for my first Boston Marathon at 20. And then I came back and I was like to the University of Portland and I was like, okay, I guess I can run now.
Mhm.
So then I did walk on to the cross country team. And I told the coach, I said, so I qualified for the Boston Marathon. You suppose you can help me train for that? He's
Mhm.
like, yeah, sure, why not? So I walked on for my junior and senior year at the University of Portland, again, a D1 school, and I ran cross country for them. They wanted me to run indoor track, and I'm sorry, I have no desire to go around a small loop that many times, and you're not going to give me enough money to do it. So, no, I'm going to train for Boston Marathon. So, I ran the Boston Marathon twice, once my junior year, once my senior year. And at that point, I was, very much in love with distance running.
Mhm.
And so I went on to, after I ran Boston twice, qualified twice, ran it twice, and then I went on to do, I don't know, another handful and a half more marathons, of which by the time I was heading towards grad school and doing prerequisites for nutrition,
Mhm.
because my undergrad is in history. And so I had to do a little bit of a 180 in terms of my academics
Mhm.
to go to grad school for nutrition. And I was taking a nutrition prereq course, and there was a guy in there, and he's like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to run this marathon." It was the first Bend marathon that they'd done in a long time. I was like, "Okay, cool.
Mhm.
I'll help you do that. I'll help you train for it if you want." He's like, "Yeah, sure, that'd be great." So we did, I think, a couple training runs together, whatever. I showed up at the race, and Bend at that time was still a mid-size city, we'll say. It's
Mhm.
huge now, but
Yeah.
it was half the size then that it is now. And I had been running races for a while there now, so people knew who I was. I was usually coming in the top 10, if not the top 5 overall for women. So it can't really show up at a race and hide and just be this bandit supporter runner and not
Mhm.
register. So I thought, okay, I'll register. And there was somebody at the registration table that's like, yeah, Amanda, there's money on the line for this race. Like, oh, okay. I'd never been like at that level,
Yeah.
of contending. So we go along, we're running the race. I'm running with this guy, kind of cheering him on stuff. And we get to, I don't know, like mile 5 or something like that. It was fairly early on in the 26.2 miles of the marathon.
Mhm.
And somebody, he was doing fine, but somebody that knew me from the running club and other races, they said, Amanda, you're second. Like you're in the money in terms of your positioning. And I looked at the guy and I'm like, I gotta go. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll see you in class on Monday,
Yeah.
but I gotta go because I could use that money.
Yeah.
So I went on, I left him. I started to run my own pace. I finished in second. I won $500 that paid for nutrition books
Yep.
and science books for
Mhm.
these prereqs classes that I was taking. And then I went on to run a few other marathons after that. But what was starting to happen, and this ties into our fueling conversation that
Mhm.
we'll get into, is I wasn't fueling my body as well. Because remember, I haven't started nutrition yet. I'm still a history person that liked to
Mhm.
run. And I liked to run again for the people. So even from in high school, liked it for the people as I was running. And I didn't really love my teammates at University of Portland, let's be honest.
Mhm.
That was a whole different scene socially. And I was just there to learn how to be a fast runner. I didn't really do much with them socially, a couple here or there, but that's about it. But then when I got done and I was running on my own and running with the Central Oregon Running Club, again, I was running with these people because I enjoyed their company. And so
Mhm.
it wasn't uncommon for me to do a long run with somebody that was training for an Ironman midweek and then show up at the club race or the club run on a Saturday morning, and we would go do another 20 miler around Smith Rock or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was doing a lot of running and I was underfueling my body. When I was in Austria, I ended up losing a ton of weight. And part of that story ties to, if you've ever seen the movie, now it's an old movie, but Sabrina, which it was the remake of the old version of it.
Mhm.
But Julia Ormond, Harrison Ford, and I remember watching that movie before I went to Austria, and I was like, what if my body kind of changed in this year? Like, what if I lost some weight and I came back and my friends were all like, oh, who's this? And more importantly, the guys were like, oh, who's this?
Mhm.
So I back up a little bit. So I had that in my mind when I went to Austria, and I did lose a ton of weight in Austria
Yeah.
because I had started marathon running.
Mhm.
And so then when I came back, I was thinner, I was faster, I could run for the University of Portland. I ended up running on their varsity team,
Mhm.
one of the top fastest 100 women in the country, going to Western states and nationals. But I was getting validation for being that fast runner and now being in this smaller body. But I didn't have the knowledge and the skills to how to actually be fueling myself adequately. I
Mhm.
thought what I was doing was great, but really, what I was doing was living out a disordered relationship with food. I was never clinically diagnosed with an eating disorder, but it probably would have been pretty easy to do so
Yeah.
when I think about it now. And now, as a professional, having worked with eating disorders, knowing what the diagnostic criteria was,
Mhm.
yeah, I was there.
Yeah.
But again, I was never doing the running or underfueling my body just for the looks, but I was doing it to have that competitive edge.
Yep.
So because of that, I ended up getting injured towards the end of my running career,
Mhm.
to the point where I can't run anymore. I have a chronic low back problem. I have a disc that's drying out. The disc above it herniates itself every once in a while. So running and I, sadly, are not friends anymore,
Yeah.
which is where the cycling comes into play
Mhm.
because I still like going long. I still like going hard. I love being fast. And
Mhm.
so, but because my body couldn't take that pounding, my spine couldn't take that pounding anymore, then, I mean, and it took me, it was not an immediate transition. It was
Yeah.
still probably 10, maybe 12 years before I then really slid into like being a cyclist. Now, maybe not that long, maybe 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
And because it was a lot of fighting tooth and nail to give up running because that had become my identity. It
Yeah.
become my identity in Bend. They knew me as this athlete. I had a lot of pride for running my first marathons, running marathons, winning money, coming in the top 1 or 2 women overall, getting medals and awards for that. Folks were listening here, but you can see it behind me. There's a wood carved eagle
Hmm.
behind me, and that is one of the trophies that I won in the Adirondacks, a chainsaw eagle. So, that had become part of who I was. So to
Hmm.
give that up in the support of my body needing to heal from these injuries, that was tough. It's probably one of the toughest things I've ever done in my life, to be honest,
Hmm.
is to make that identity switch. So I kind of slid into cycling more as a commuting option. Once I went to grad school, I started doing some cycling there in the Seattle area, and just for a way to get exercise because I couldn't run anymore. And it wasn't until after grad school, after doing my dietetic internship, that I moved to the Seattle area and I was like, who wants to sit in traffic? This is ridiculous. There's a perfectly good bike trail right over there.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure out how to ride my bike to work,
Hmm.
safety, not get the bike stolen,
Hmm.
what gear do I need? I'm going to figure out how to do that so that, again, like exercise for me was a strong part of what I know now to be emotional regulation. And yes, there was that identity piece to it, but I think I kind of fell into it and it became part of my identity because I was doing it so much, but I was doing it so much because it also helped me relax.
Yep.
It also helped me make sense of the world. Again, that's what I know now when after studying emotional regulation, nervous system regulation, things like that. I understand the athletic component to that. And that's mostly what drove me to doing the activity. And then, of course, the people on the side, like I've mentioned. So I started cycling as a commuter for pretty much my whole time in
Hmm.
Seattle. Like if a dentist, a haircut place, a doctor, my job was not close enough to the trail, the Burt Gilman Trail, which is one
Hmm.
of the more famous rails to trails. If I didn't live near it and none of those essential services were near it, I didn't go to those services. It needed to be within a decent distance from the Burt Gilman Trail
Hmm.
because that was my lifeline to going to work. I went on to go to work after graduating from the dietetic internship, landed in Seattle, started working for Whole Foods Natural Market for I don't know, 6 years or so, a little over 6 years in various roles. And I was commuting all over the city, from out in the suburbs, out in Redmond, Linwood, on into Inner Bay and in more of a downtown part of the city. So that became my new identity. And it was helpful because it didn't have competition to it. I
Yeah.
learned that I had to pull myself out of that
Hmm.
competitive and training mindset. I couldn't be friends with numbers for a while because I needed to heal that relationship with food and exercise.
Yep.
And sure, doing exercise for social was cool, but I couldn't do it with people socially that were training for things because that would trigger that mindset again
Hmm.
for me. And I needed to do something different. So it worked out pretty well in that, again, it doesn't mean it was easy, but then I slid into being a cyclist commuter instead of a competitive cyclist. And that
Nice.
really helped my body and my mind heal from everything that I had been through as a competitive runner and the advancement that I had made as a competitive runner. And granted, there was that physical barrier of like, you can't go run anymore. That
Hmm.
doesn't mean I didn't try.
Yep.
That doesn't mean that I didn't try a few more races after the injury was already confirmed. But then I just sucked it up at the races and it just wasn't fun. And that became more validating that, hey, it's time to pivot
Hmm.
and go do something else. That doesn't mean you can't move your body. And it means let's look at exercise from a different perspective, which, so age-wise, I was in my late 20s when all of that was happening. And it's helped me really identify with what are some of my clients and patients going through now as their bodies are changing in perimenopause and menopause,
Hmm.
and they can't move their body the same way that they used to. There's a lot of grief that goes along with that. And pivoting around like your body doesn't look the same. It's not functioning the same. It's got a lots of crazy shit going on
Hmm.
with it, the symptoms of perimenopause. And so I'm glad that I had that experience as early as I did, even though it was super hard. Like I said, it was probably the hardest thing I've done in my life to this point. But now I can have a lot of empathy and compassion and understanding and hopefully support women going, it's not going to be like this forever. Yeah, it sucks right now.
Hmm.
And you are going to come through this on the other side. Sure, you're probably going to relate to movement and food and your body differently, probably for the better. So just hang on for the wild ride. Happy to sit in the suck with you. And we're going to get through this together on the other side. Because I've been there, I've done it. And even though I was doing it in my late 20s, does the age really matter at that point? Like a body is still changing, a body is still having to shift in how it likes to move. That can happen at any age. So that is how I still maintain an active lifestyle.
Yeah.
So now I don't live in the Seattle area anymore. I live in the mountain town of Joseph, Oregon, on the Oregon-Washington, Idaho border. It's about 7 hours from Seattle. There are no stoplights. There are more cows than people. And there's a lot of amazing roads, gravel and paved roads to be riding. And I'm out on my bike every day. Probably riding about the same amount daily that I was riding in Seattle, except now I'll do it all at once instead of riding in the morning and then riding in the afternoon commute
Hmm.
home. And I live at the base of some pretty amazing mountains. And as hiking season gets started, we're out every weekend, we're backpacking every weekend. There's a crew of women that I go out with, of which I think I'm the youngest at 45. So we've got 45, 47, 49, and 61 is the ages of our hiking crew. And so we have a lot of conversations about this changing bodies and how do we deal with stamina and eating. Eating is also different too, and not from like a calories in, calories out perspective, but what foods are you going to tolerate
Hmm.
when you're out here on a backpack and you are packing breakfast, lunches, and dinners. And hopefully your dinners work for you and they don't cause a GI nightmare and you
Right.
can feel your activity. So now I'm still an active person. I still identify as that way. I'm not competitive anymore, but I am there pushing my body to be as strong as it can be in this season of life, continuing to move, practice yoga more. I do a lot more yoga than I used to,
Hmm.
which I probably should have done a lot more earlier. But now I have to because otherwise my back won't function. It won't do the backpacks. It won't do the hiking, carrying a pack if I don't do some of that mobility and strengthening and flexibility training in addition to the cardio with the hiking and cycling.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's all unfolded pretty well for me as my active lifestyle,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean it's not been without some bumps along the way, that's for sure.
Right. I did have one question, just something that like because I also ran collegiately for Michigan State. I ran the 800
Mhm.
and I had to work through kind of like post-college, like not having running be your main focus anymore. Like where did your confidence like where does your confidence come from now? And like how is that transition? Because I can't imagine like everybody knows who you are, you're winning all these races. I mean, there's a lot of ego that's being fed, and then all of a sudden you're not going to do that anymore. Like, how did you transition? Um, and like, how did you manage like your confidence level? Like, where does that come from now? Where's your confidence come from now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think just circumstantial helped me a bit. And then about the same time that I was transitioning out of running, I was going to grad school. And so then I was moving to Seattle for grad school.
Hmm.
Bastyr University is where I did grad school. And about that same time, my folks were leaving Bend and they were moving to Joseph. So I was also kind of limiting ties to Bend. And that was the community that knew me as the competitive athlete and that, top five finisher type thing.
Hmm.
So moving into Seattle, yeah, I did some running in Seattle when I first got there, but nobody knew who I was. So it didn't matter. Now, of course, I had my own ego. And like I
Yeah.
said, when I would show up at some of those races in the Methow Valley, which has got a ton of athletes in it, and I myself, I would have expectations of like, I should be finishing here. But in a way, it was a good reality check for myself going, well, one, no, your body doesn't do that anymore.
Hmm.
And two, nobody cares because nobody knows who you are
Right.
because I'm not in Bend anymore. My family's not in Bend anymore. So I think that, and that was just happening for different reasons. Bend was getting too big. My parents were tired of it. And so they were looking for someplace smaller to live. And I was moving on with my life to go do grad school and then live in New Hampshire to do an internship and then come back to Seattle. But because I moved from that small area where I was the big fish in the small pond
Hmm.
and I moved to the big pond, and I wasn't in a place where I could be competitive anymore or show up, like physically could not run races by the time I got to Seattle,
Hmm.
then it was more that life circumstances that put me in a position where I didn't have to be living up to anything anymore other than to myself. So then that just left me working on my own self
Hmm.
versus having to put up with other people's comments and expectations. And there are still, some of my parents' friends that knew me when I was that runner. They might ask, like, oh, still running or whatever. But because I was going through grad school and postgraduate program with the dietetic internship, I could chalk it up to, gosh, I just don't have time for that like I used to. I don't have time for the training. And so that kind of gave me an out.
Hmm.
And that was fine for them. Nobody ever pushed on that. Nobody had expectations for me that I was going to continue that. So they were just like, well, okay, cool. Amanda's going on with her life.
Hmm.
So then I just had to work on my own mental conversation. And that's just like I said, that's the conversation I had with myself. I remind myself, nobody cares. Nobody knows what you used to do in Bend or
Hmm.
what place you came in the Bend Marathon and you won money, or that you came in first in the Adirondack Marathon, or you came in second in the Avenue of the Giants. Nobody cares. Nobody here knows that because I'm a brand new person walking into any of these people's lives. So that made that transition easier. And I just had to keep reminding myself of this. Like that season of your life is past
Hmm.
and you're moving into a new season of life. And again, that doesn't mean you can't move your body. Now, the other part of that transition was having confidence, finding confidence for myself that what I was doing for movement was enough.
Yeah.
Because if you weren't running hard and like training, what? You don't have a training program? You're just going out for a bike ride or a hike? Like, what? That's not enough. Like we used to do, you probably were the same way. Like you did your training program first,
Yep.
and then you went for the leisurely bike ride with some friends or a
Hmm.
hike with some friends, but you got your training workout in first. So that was the other part of it. The inner conversation was now this type of movement I'm doing, that it's enough and it's okay. I mean, it's still twice, if not three, four times the recommended amount of physical exercise from the American Heart Association.
Yeah.
So, but it is different than what I was doing.
Hmm.
So now I work on, and it's still I think, an active practice to challenge. Say I'm not going for the full bike ride that day. I only have time to ride for the 45 minutes or an hour. It's enough. Or my
Yeah.
body's feeling a little bit more tired. I'm having a low capacity day related to perimenopause. It's okay to just do yoga. That's enough. So that continues to be a continued practice for me to remind myself that any movement, some is better than none.
Hmm.
And even the lower capacity movement or how I'm thinking about it, like not training, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's all enough. So there were two inner dialogues there that I needed to have with myself. One, nobody cares because nobody knows what you used to do.
Hmm.
And two, learn to find acceptance with what is enough movement. And honestly, going through grad school and also learning the fueling part of it really helped me check some of the beliefs and myths, then debunk those that I had in my mind of like what's enough and how do you fuel for exercise. So that was a helpful part too. I don't recommend people go do a graduate program to help them heal from a disordered relationship with food and exercise,
Yeah.
but it ended up being a helpful part for me. And so then after, years, so I'm almost 20 years post being that runner person. So after 20 years of practicing those inner dialogues of nobody cares, they're worrying about their own stuff, and enough is enough, and it's okay,
Hmm.
then there's confidence that continues to build with those mindsets that you continue to practice. And then now in the work that I do, so helping other women realize what is enough for them. And in some cases, helping others find that some is better than none and helping them get started with some movement. And that's okay. They don't have to go be that, athlete type person. Because
Hmm.
to be honest, like sometimes people will look at my bio and go, oh my gosh, like she used to be a marathon, like competitive marathon runner. I don't know if I want to work with her. Like, is
Yeah.
she going to make me train for a marathon? And so I also try to be pretty vocal, like we are here too, of like what that journey was like for me. And to have confidence also comes from being able to tell that story
Hmm.
in a very honest way, going, yeah, I thought what I was doing was right. And it was kind of messing me up and messing up my body from underfueling and training too hard and not being okay with just doing yoga for the day or just doing some cross training and going for the bike ride or whatever. So it's all come with time, time and age and wisdom.
Yeah, exactly. I definitely connect with you on the well, I'm sure like almost every woman that's around my age and ran in college, I feel like this is like there's so many people who have like a disordered relationship with food. Um, and I definitely was one of them too. So let's talk a little bit about like what is intuitive eating and like I know I really, really connected when you say like the numbers thing. Like I can't weigh myself on like I can't look at numbers or anything like that. Like that will be triggering for me where I would compare it to the last time and then think about it a ton. So, um, like what is intuitive eating and like I guess what is like the success of it too? Because I have such a hard time without like finding like a I'm so goal oriented, which I think a lot of people are, and like what is that? What does success look like for that too?
So, one of the common misconceptions with intuitive eating is, oh, you just get to eat what you want when you want, and it's all a free for all. And in the beginning, yes, that's true. That needs to happen because those first few principles of intuitive eating, of rejecting the diet mentality and allowing all foods to be at the table and honoring your hunger, all of those principles of intuitive eating are important because that's what helps get you detached from being so hard and fast with the numbers. And it encourages you not to track your food and not to track your macros and not to weigh yourself, like literally detach yourself from those numbers. And what that's also teaching someone, and this is why working on intuitive eating can be really helpful to do it with a practitioner in the beginning, even though the books are great, the workbook is amazing, and it's got a lot of good tools in it. But it can be helpful to show up in front of someone that helps you challenge your beliefs around, but what if I don't know what my weight is? Like, how do I know, to your point, that I'm making progress?
Yes.
Well, the question is, well, what you thought was progress before, that's not the measure we're going to use anymore.
Hmm.
So as someone starts to detach themselves from the numbers, the practice then becomes tuning into what does your body need. And this is the idea of interoceptive awareness.
Hmm.
So this is a concept that is studied in the literature. And interoceptive awareness are those innate senses in our body that we can't override. We like to think that we can. But for example, one of those cues is the need to use the restroom. Now, if you're on a long car ride, and I'm sure all of us that are listening here today have been on long car rides, you're like, oh my gosh, how long is it to the next gas station or the next rest stop? Like, we're trying to, at that point, we have to kind of override those cues, but we're only going to be able to override those cues for so long, and then we're going to have a wet situation. Well, the same thing happens with hunger and thirst and fullness. But we are trained through diet culture to override the hunger cues. And not so much thirst, but we just don't worry about the thirst one as much because it doesn't seem to have the same negative connotation of like the calories in, calories out, and thirst makes you, if you're drinking too much, you're going to get fat. Now, if you're drinking certain things, maybe so. But the point
Hmm.
being that most of the noise that we hear is centered around food versus beverages.
Totally.
So that's an important concept to understand that as you're detaching yourself from those numbers, at the same time, you're hopefully also practicing interoceptive awareness. What does gentle hunger feel like? What does ravenous hunger feel like? What does subtle fullness feel like a pleasant fullness feel like? What does overfull feel like? What's the relationship between getting ravenously hungry,
Hmm.
blowing past gentle fullness, and now you're uncomfortably full, which is what most people are used to.
Yeah.
Because again, diet culture has taught us where you're not actually hungry until you're ravenously hungry.
Hmm.
So there's two things going on there at the same time. You're ditching that diet mentality and relying on numbers to tell you what and when and how to eat. And you're tuning into your body and learning how to shut up and listen to what your body is telling you in terms of how much food do you need? What kind of food do you need? Is it time to eat yet? So once somebody starts practicing, and this is why I say it's helpful to work with someone because
Hmm.
as you're rejecting that diet mentality, 9 times out of 10, the clients that I see, they've been working on that. And now they're in this messy middle place, which one affectionately called fuck it eating. And because you're like, oh, it's all on the table. This is awesome. I've
Yeah.
missed this food and I've missed this food and I can eat it all anytime I want to.
Hmm.
But then they get in the place of like, but A, I'm gaining weight. I have to go buy new clothes. This sucks. This can't be healthy. What do
Hmm.
I do now? And so then oftentimes people go, well, screw it. Intuitive eating clearly doesn't work. And I'm like, wait. You got another, like, mm, 5 principles of intuitive eating to
Yeah.
go through. You've done your work going through the first part and making full permission with foods. That's amazing. But now this next part, the latter part of the principles, are helping you again to continue to tune in to fullness as much as the hunger piece, understanding that connection, helping you find satisfaction with foods. So how are we not restricting, but how are we not binging or overeating? We're finding that sweet spot of satisfaction,
Hmm.
and we're learning to make both food and exercise or movement goals based on behavior-based goals that support your health. Maybe that is lowering blood sugar.
Hmm.
Maybe that's lowering cholesterol. Maybe it is in being able to go hike whatever trail you want to do this summer with your family or your friends.
Hmm.
Maybe that's the goal. So to your point, I'm like, well, how do I know if it's working?
Yeah.
What am I measuring success with? Again, the definition of that has changed. Now it's not about, oh, sweet, you met your goals on MyFitnessPal, cool.
Hmm.
Or you met this number on the scale, amazing. Again, numbers, numbers, numbers. Now it's, and this is a little bit caveat here. Yes, there are numbers tied to measuring your metabolic health, but those numbers are rooted in science related to this is what your blood says is going on in your body,
Yeah.
not what some logarithm says that you should be eating
Hmm.
more or less of. or what a scale that may or may not be calibrated correctly is telling you
Yep.
too. So especially for women in midlife, where because hormone fluctuations are going on behind the scenes, estrogen is trending downward, that's always been our wing woman to support our metabolic health, our cardiovascular health, our bone health. So there are markers of is intuitive eating working or not
Hmm.
beyond the scale, especially in this season of life. And this would work in any season of life too. We get a little bit more concerned about it in the menopause transition, again, because estrogen isn't there in the same way. And then we move into being higher risk for
Hmm.
cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, diabetes, things like that as we move through the menopause transition.
Hmm.
So again, knowing if it's working or not, that's what I'm always looking at with my clients. Well, when's the last time you had lab work done? How's your cholesterol doing?
Hmm.
How's your A1C doing? How, have they had a DEXA scan in a while, measuring bone density? So we're still always honoring hunger. We're always honoring satisfaction. We're choosing foods by leading with satisfaction. For example, we're having a turkey sandwich on whole grain bread, maybe with a side salad, but we're going to add the chips too.
Hmm.
Because having something crunchy and salty next to kind of the squishy sandwich, that's awesome. That's a great texture combination. Maybe we're going to finish it with a chocolate chip cookie. Cool. That's an example of now we are practicing with a balance of nutrient dense foods, more nutrition compared to calories, and this is like a big flashing yellow neon sign, and
Hmm.
a variety of pleasure dense foods. And once someone becomes more advanced in intuitive eating, they're willing to accept that it's not an either or. I can eat the chips, I shouldn't eat the chips. It's not this all or nothing thinking with those foods.
Hmm.
Now it moves into I can include them. And what do my health markers say? Am I eating and moving my body and stress management and sleep in a way that honors the health markers and helping them get in the direction that I want them to go, which for most people is lowering blood sugar, lowering cholesterol. So it again, it becomes like how we're defining success of
Hmm.
intuitive eating or how you're eating and is it working, even performance, to be honest. So, we've started talking about like being active here.
Yep.
So that could be another measure of is this working, a measure of success, but it's based on, hey, how do you feel in your body?
Hmm.
How's your energy level getting to the top of that climb? Well, you're kind of dogging it a little bit. That's okay. Like, what else is going on? How well did you sleep last night?
Hmm.
How old are you?
Yep.
What might be going on with hormones?
Yep.
It's not just all about food.
Yep.
So that's the other piece that those kind of later principles of intuitive eating teach someone is that it's not all about food. And especially when we're looking at intuitive eating in perimenopause and menopause, it's even more so not all about food. So when
Hmm.
I first did my certification as a certified intuitive eating counselor, I was learning about intuitive eating generally. But as I started to tune into more the women that were coming into my practice, their age, what was going on with them physically, and all of this, I'm like, oh, there's something going on behind the scenes
Yep.
here that is independent of them being able to practice intuitive eating or not. It's independent of the food and the exercise.
Hmm.
There's a whole story going on behind them related to hormones that are is affecting the fatigue, brain fog, being able to sleep related to night sweats, all
Hmm.
of this, increased anxiety. We might need to look at intuitive eating a little bit differently for our population. And I raise my hand to that too. I'm in that population.
Yeah.
So now my work more centers around helping women understand, okay, here's the basics of intuitive eating, and here's how intuitive eating relates more specifically to this season of life and how it can really help that season of life
Hmm.
because it's teaching you to tune into your body. And in perimenopause and menopause transition, your body is yelling at you, telling you that things are changing
Yeah.
and you need to make some pivots or it's not going to go well for you. So, and one of those pivots can be letting go of those numbers.
Yep.
because trying to follow those numbers is not lining up anymore with what's going on behind the scenes in your body.
Mhm.
So the number of times I hear women say, well, I used to be able to lose weight all the time before. Like all I did was plug into my fitness pal and do, like follow the rules, and I would lose the weight. It doesn't work like that anymore. I said, yeah, you're
Mhm.
right, it doesn't, which is why we don't need to work on numbers anymore.
Yeah.
Let's choose other measures of success and whether something is working for you or not,
Mhm.
because those static plans and a logarithm-based recommendations are not going to work the same way they used to. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. This is just making me realize that I still have a disordered eating issue.
Oh, shoot. That's okay. I know a good dietitian that could help you with
Yeah,
that.
I know. I'm thinking I need to work with someone. And then I might know who. But this has been really interesting for me too because I actually just I had my last summer I had my appendix rupture and I've been trying to like get I'm 38 and I'm trying to like get back into shape and it's been taking a really long time and I've been feeling really tired and all this stuff. And so it's just making me realize that it's probably part of this is like nutrition and not probably fueling the way that I should and maybe some test or some sort of lab test should be done too because I know it was a lot. I was in the hospital for, 6 days and had tubes put in, all this stuff. So like I'm sure that all impacted me more than I even like realized. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's given me a
Yeah.
lot to think about.
I mean, it's a major stress on your body. A major injury and surgery like that is a huge
Hmm.
stress on your body. And we don't bounce back from those stresses at 38 like we did at
Yeah.
18 and 28. So,
Hmm.
and that's, it doesn't need to be doom or gloom,
Yeah.
but it's just acknowledging what it is and going,
Hmm.
oh, again, like maybe there's some pivots that I need to do to take
Yes.
care of my 38-year-old body
Hmm.
compared to what I would have done to take care of my 28-year-old body.
Exactly. As someone who is still active and maybe not in like a competitive aspect, but like not that that's any more valuable or less valuable than being active just for activity's sake. Um like what words of empowerment would you give women who have like are just starting out or potentially are trying to keep going or maybe are getting into perimenopause or menopause. Like what words of empowerment would you give them?
Yeah, two good phrases. One, and I've heard this in a bunch of different places, so I don't know exactly who to credit it to, but some is better than none. Actually, I take that back. Girls Gone Strong is an organization that I did a menopause coaching certificate through, and some is better than none, I believe, came out of that. And that means that if that sum is 5 minutes, cool. It's better than not moving your body at all today.
Hmm.
Or some is better than none in terms of food. If you were able to have some vegetables today, or some whole grains, or some beans and legumes, or protein, great. You checked one meal box, so to
Hmm.
speak. Like some is better than none. The other one is simplify to amplify, which comes from one of my online business mentors, and where she was using it to apply like to building an online business,
Yep.
it works exactly with our health goals too.
Hmm.
So if you say, for example, you want to be more active and you want to go hike that trail this summer, here we are, we're recording this in April, simplifying your behavior-based goal to get you to that bigger goal
Hmm.
works all every time. So, for example, that might be, okay, well, you're going to move your body twice this week, just twice. And the number of times that I've said this and clients go, again, what? Is that enough? And I say, yes, because if you can set the goal of, I'm going to go for a 20-minute walk twice a week, that's super simple. Write it down like which days. We're going to do it on Tuesday. We're going to do it on Thursday. Okay, great. Now we get to the end of a month, and if you've been able to do that 2 days a week, 4 weeks in a row, well,
Hmm.
now you've walked 8 times. And that is going to have an amplified effect, not only on your fitness, but also some of those metabolic numbers that we were talking about. It's going to improve your cholesterol. It's going to improve your blood sugar.
Hmm.
but we often get in again that mindset of like, well, 2 days isn't enough. 20 minutes isn't enough. I could totally do 4 or 5. Like, I bet you can, but the goal is going to be two. And if
Hmm.
you do have enough capacity and you are having a great week without a lot of brain fog and fatigue, sweet, knock yourself out. Do 3 or 4 walks. That's great. But simplify to amplify. Keep those behavior-based goals very simple and doable, almost to where you feel like you could trip over the bar. It's so low.
Hmm.
But then that's going to help you want to do it again come Thursday, come the following Tuesday. And then by the end of a month, you're going to go, wow, yeah, actually, I think I could do a half an hour next month. I think I could do 40 minutes the next month. So that if your goal is to go and do this beautiful hike, say in July after the snow is melted out of the mountains, and we're starting in April,
Hmm.
great. If we're like simplifying to amplify now and we can continue to stack that habit on top of itself, then by July, you're easily going to be able to do that hike at whatever mileage or however time commitment it's going to be all day, whatever. You're
Hmm.
going to be able to do that with no problem. But starting really, really small is super important, especially in this season of life. So some is better than none and simplify to amplify. And that works with both food and exercise.
Yep, I love it. Is there anything that you're like, oh, I wish I would have said? Do you have anything that you that I didn't ask you that you wanted to mention?
No, I think we pretty much covered my life story, the client's life story. I think we're good.
Okay, great. All right. Well, what would you like to plug? I know you have a company, and I'm sure after everybody heard this, they want to contact you because I definitely do. Um, what, where can they find you?
So you can find me both on Instagram, Facebook, and on at Amanda, no, Alpine Nutrition. On the social handle, it's just Alpine Nutrition. You can also find me over on my website, which is alpinenutrition.org. And then I also have a YouTube channel, which we're just starting to revitalize a little bit more, and it's called
Cool.
Savor Food and Body. And on the website in particular, there's a link right at the top banner, right on the homepage, where you can download an intuitive eating get started guide. And that will land you on my weekly email list, and where I send in even little either short videos or recipes or other tidbits of information to help people get started with intuitive eating and continue their intuitive eating journey. And I just launched a gentle nutrition made easy online course too, which is about to hit the website pretty soon. So there's lots of different options from one-on-one counseling to the online course to just getting on the email list. Lots of resources for folks at alpinenutrition.org.
That's great. Um, so I'll do my plugs. You can follow me personally. That's at Jacalyn Gross, JacalynGross. You can follow You Are Sportswear. That's the letter U, the letter R, Sportswear on all social platforms. You can check out any of our products at yoursportswear.com. If you're listening to this and want to watch the video version, you can go to You Are Sportswear's YouTube channel and subscribe. Both the audio and video version of this podcast was produced by Jeremy Canaria and edited by me. Thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate it. And I seriously learned so much from this talk. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, Jacqueline. Thanks for having me.